So I'd like to call to order this regular board meeting of the Urbana Park District Board of Commissioners for the month of November 2021. We are not expecting any remote attendance this evening, so we can move on to the first item of the agenda before approving the remainder of it. And that first item is a public hearing for truth and taxation. And the Board of Park Commissioners of the Urbana Park District, Champaign County, Illinois, now opens a public hearing today, November 9th, 2021, at approximately 7:03 p.m. The hearing is being held at the Planning and Operations Facility at 1011 East Kerr Avenue in Urbana. The purpose of the hearing will be to receive public comments on the proposed tax levy as required by the Truth and Taxation Law. Is there any member of the public who would like to make a statement during this public hearing regarding this proposed property tax levy? And I see no indication of anyone in the public wishing to make a comment. I would ask our executive director, have you received any comments with regards to the black box?
Either email or telephone calls.
The black box publishing this hearing ran in the paper on October 28th. According to all of the rules, it was in Section A or Section B of the regular part of the paper.
It was in Section A.
Yeah, and it was a nice bold box there. And
yeah, no, it definitely ran, but there has not been a public response as far as okay. Well, seeing no one from the public wishing to make comment this evening, I will declare this hearing closed. And we will move on then to the question of accepting or amending our agenda for the evening. I'm not aware of any proposed changes. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
That's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any discussion or questions? And given that we're all masked up, I'd prefer we go ahead and do roll call vote. We'll start one with Roger.
Aye.
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 Okay, that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. So that takes us on to more general public comment. And I still see no person from the public here to make comment. Has there been any indication electronically of somebody wanting to do that?
None.
Okay. All right.
I do have a comment about the staff introductions section.
Okay.
We've been testing out hybrid meetings using the snowball microphone. It's kind of over there.
Oh, that's the camera, sorry.
Oh yeah, it's back there on the counter. Did you do hybrid yesterday also with the foundation? And I think it's been working okay. So one of Tim and I's ideas about moving forward with hybrid meetings is, like, for example, staff introductions. We'd normally have our interns come and be introduced to the board, and would we like, just in the interest of keeping numbers down, to not have as many people in the building as far as like still being within the COVID pandemic, would we want to invite folks like that to a hybrid format that they could come and Zoom with the board members? What are your thoughts on that? Because we have at least one intern that hasn't been introduced. We were kind of holding on.
The other advantage too is certainly an efficiency on their end. So I'm assuming a staff person wouldn't feel slighted. Not,
I mean, it's a shame not actually to see the person right here when they're being introduced, but it certainly is safer, all things considered, I suppose, to do it in a Zoom
staff tried to think
fashion,
of as many ways we could help that situation and still be in person.
Yeah.
And so that was one easily arranged.
And how do we as a board see the person who's zooming in?
Projected on the screen.
So we have to turn around and we have to get arranged so we can see the,
I didn't know if there's a way we could bring in another TV monitor, hook it up so that they'd be able to see.
How was it? Were they up here yesterday?
They were, but it worked fine for our looser group,
Yeah.
We
as a
can
foundation.
configure the seating isn't all that hard.
yeah, I mean, we do that for other parts of presentations. It's just, I'm just thinking about it, yeah.
Could we give them a choice if there was someone who really wanted to come?
Well, I
and
think
meet
that
us in
was
person? Is
one
that-
of Kelsey's concerns too. She was kind of thinking, if we're going to be inviting people to participate via Zoom, that we might need to like advertise the Zoom as a way that you could watch the meeting live. I mean, I know we record it, so we were still thinking about that because I mean,
That was gonna be my question, is the precedent that we set that for some reason I absolutely for efficiency and, asking interns to come in, which are already non-paid basically, right? To come to a board meeting, I'm totally fine with, but yeah, I didn't know about the other implications on other folks or other things.
we're still looking into it.
Okay,
We can
Yep.
move on, but I just wanted to,
yeah.
We have options.
yeah. Thanks.
Moving right along then, the Urbana Park District Advisory Committee report. So, we had some minutes in our board packet. Was there anything anybody wanted to add or ask about that?
It was great to see the new
Yeah, we had a,
facility that CUSR has. And I mean, as usual, everybody's just blown away by the amount of work those folks do. It's just pretty stunning. And it was a pretty full
I
house.
think we had
for
everyone in
outback.
attendance. I think they were very interested to come
Yep.
and see it and learn about what's going on, so we're very pleased. We had full attendance, full tour of the facility, and an excellent program and discussion.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, it's time to move on to our consent agenda. And on the consent agenda this evening, our approval of minutes of three meetings, the October 5th study session, the October 12th regular board meeting, and the October 19th special board meeting. The receipt of the monthly departmental reports from Administration, Planning and Operations, and Recreation, approval of the monthly paid accounts payable, and action to accept the philanthropy report and gifts listed with gratitude. So it is the purview of any single commissioner to remove any or all of these items from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. Is there any commissioner wishing to do that? I see no indication of that. So is there a commissioner prepared to make a motion that we approve the action items on this consent agenda in an omnibus fashion?
So move.
Second.
That's moved and seconded. And under the rules of the consent agenda at this point, there is to be no further discussion. So we will hold a roll call vote, starting this time at the left with Cedric.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting in the affirmative. So we can move on now to our reports.
I think financials up first.
Alrighty. Sorry. Okay. Thank you for having me here. I'm going to present to you the financial results for the Urbana Park District through October 31st, 2021. The first report I'll discuss is called the Revenue and Expenditure Report. This report shows the receipts and expenditures for the for the prior 12-month period, the budget for the current period, and the preliminary unaudited results for the 6 months ending on October 31st. The first page of this report is what we call Sum 1. It is basically the operations of the Park District. It does not include the Capital Improvements Fund. The revenues for this period were $8,755,000, which is an increase of $1,286,000 since September. $7.4 million of our total revenues are property taxes. We received our 5th property tax distribution for levy year 2020 on October 4th, which is 96% of our property taxes, with the final payment expected in November. Expenditures for this period were $4,117,000, which is a change of $584,000 since September. We have a surplus after 6 months, which means there's an excess of revenues over expenditures paid of $4,486,000 $1,000. Moving on to the second page, this is what we call Sum 2, and this is separating out just the capital improvements fund. Revenues for this 6-month period were $172,000. And the negative interest you see on the year-to-date balance column is interest accruals for CDs for interest that was earned and recognized in fiscal year 21, but the cash will be received in fiscal year 22, at which point the negative balance will clear. Expenditures for this period were $801,000. Expenditures exceed revenues, and this leaves a net decrease in fund balance for the capital improvements fund of $629,000. Still have a long way to go, though, to spend that bond money. So there's still $6.6 million left at this point. And finally, the Sum 3 is all funds district-wide. This is the first 2 pages added together. And the net ending fund balance for the entire district is $21,104,000. So if the district were to end today, that is the amount of fund balance that we have available in the district. Following that, but we are a forever district, so it's not a thing. Following that are the individual summary reports for the main working funds: general, recreation, museum, and indoor pool. So I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have about the revenue and expenditure report before I move on.
Just one question, Katie,
Sure.
and probably those who've been on longer know this, but we're close to 96% on property tax. How does that usually resolve itself by the end of, by that last payment?
Sure. We usually get between 97 to 100, 99.9% of our property taxes, depending on the year. So typically that final payment's fairly small, and it'll pretty much finish us out, and that'll be it. Did that answer your question, or?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, great. Any other questions? There's a new law too, we were just talking about it, that's gonna allow, the reason that we don't get exactly 100% is usually for differences between the property tax bills went out, but people had already requested reductions for assessed values and things. And so they may have a reduction in their property tax bill, or they may have an exemption approved that then they don't have to pay the bill at all. And so those variations are why we don't, or non-payment too is another reason. So if somebody just doesn't pay their bill. So there's a variety of reasons why we might not receive exactly 100%, but now there's a new law that just got passed that says that you can levy the following year to, or that, I think you don't even have to levy for it. I think it's automatic.
Oh,
That you'll
really?
get the money that you lost the prior year from non-payment and that difference for bills that have been retracted in the following year.
So it's kind of like Carl, but on a
Yes.
much
Yes,
smaller
I said,
scale,
man,
yeah.
wish we had that law in 2014, we would have gotten $900,000 back. So,
Yes.
yeah.
That was a little too late.
I think that actually might be part of the reason for that law, actually. I don't know if like Carl specifically went into it, but it's to protect for situations like that. So, where a large taxpayer has been removed from the tax rolls and it affects the district. So anyway, so that's exciting. We're still learning a little bit more about how that'll actually be implemented, but I was glad to hear that they passed it.
Some relief.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so moving on to the treasurer's report. The treasurer's report is the report of the amount of cash that the district has on one day, October 31st, 2021. All 24 funds are listed with where the cash is invested. Eventually, there will be a 25th fund after last month when you approved the Brown Fund, but I haven't added it since we don't have the money yet, so I was going to add it whenever that money comes in. So there will be 25 funds, but since we haven't opened it, we haven't made a decision about where we're opening the investment account yet, I haven't added it, but eventually that will be a 25th fund, so I just wanted to explain why that hasn't gone in yet. But we have a grand total of funds for the district for the end of October of $18,966,605.32.
Katie, is there any rhyme or reason for how the funds are numbered?
Actually, yeah, because when we implemented BS&A, I had the opportunity to redo them all. So they used to be in a different order, but I kind of ordered them in a way that made sense to me. So our property tax funded funds come first. So funds 01 to 32 are all property tax funds except for the indoor pool.
Yeah.
But I plugged the indoor pool in there because those are our main 4 operating funds, so I wanted them at the very front.
Yep, yep.
And then beyond that are kind of like funds that are like driven by other sources of revenue. So like the replacement tax and things, and then the capital funds are at the end.
Good.
And payroll and interim just are actually part of the general fund, and they're just working funds, so.
Yep, yep. Good, thanks.
Yeah, so there is a little bit of a rhyme or reason. It's hard to plug them all in there, but
But you know, I mean, there's, you get to decide. It's
yeah,
not-
I did decide,
Yep,
yeah.
yep.
I put a little thought into it, but not too, I mean, it's just, they all exist. As long as they exist, it doesn't really matter what number they are, but it makes it a little bit easier for grabbing things for reports and things
Sure.
like that you can just say, I just need those 4 working funds or, and not have to go through a whole list, so. Okay, cool. Good question. Thanks. All right, page 2 of the treasurer's report lists amounts that we have in interest-bearing accounts. So of the $18,967,000 on hand, $17,377,000 is out in investments. This is up quite a bit from about $1 million from last month because I worked with Park Pool Iptalaf to invest about $992,000 in 4 one-year CDs at an interest rate of 0.1%, a net rate of 0.1%.
Whoopee.
But that's a lot better than the 0.02% we were getting in the money market account. So I haven't seen any improvement in interest rates, and from what I've been reading about the economic outlook and the market, it's not going up anytime soon. There's just so much cash in the market right now, so that's driving interest rates down. So I just thought, you know what, I've been asking them several times, like, hey, if you see any good rates out there, every once in a while a bank will come out that wants cash and they'll have a good rate. So they put together this portfolio of these 4 CDs for me, and I said, okay, well, let's go for it. I'm sick of making pennies, so we might as well earn $1,000 in a year.
Now we can make nickels, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think the outlook for these 4 CDs, we're gonna get a gross amount of like $1,400 at the end. It was just like terrible.
Yeah, but better than nothing.
Well, yeah, but for $1 million, it's just,
know, it's
sad.
pathetic.
It's sad. But I mean, yeah, it is better than what we would have gotten a couple hundred or whatever,
Yeah.
so. But to go from, making 60 to 80,000 a year plus in interest to nothing is hard
But
for me to
then
watch.
then you have to pay more for the money you borrow, so it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's one way and another.
True,
Yeah.
yeah. So we do benefit on the other side when we're doing our geo bonds next month, so
Yeah.
you're right. Anyway, so I just want to let you know of that update that I have invested in some more CDs, and I may do that with Commerce as well. Most of our money with Commerce is not in the CDs right now. We used to at one time have like 7 or 8 CDs invested in the ladder, and right now we're down to 3. So I need to I was kind of waiting, like, okay, are the interest rates going to go up? Are they going to go up? And then they just they're pretty much just plateaued. For a while they were down, but now they're just kind of, So I'll probably just go ahead and reinvest and just keep them fairly short term so that I can continue to reinvest if rates go up. So that's my main strategy there. The next section at the bottom of the page lists interfund loans, and there were no changes to any interfund loans this period. And the final section on page 3 lists disbursements for the month of October. Vendor payments on the totals on this page match the paid accounts payable that you approved on the consent agenda. Total disbursements of funds for October were $753,000. And the largest outflow was in the liability fund, which included in that amount our annual renewal of our general liability insurance policy that we carry with iParks. So that renews every October, and that payment was made. Everything else is pretty standard bills. And with that, I present the treasurer's report to you for approval.
I move we accept the treasurer's report for audit.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions on the point? Hearing none, let's do a roll call, starting with Roger.
Aye.
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 Okay, that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting in the affirmative.
Okay, great. Lastly, I'll just cover the areas in the capital budgets where there were activity this period. So any account that had any activity in it are highlighted with a little asterisk symbol. On the first page in the series 2019A bonds budget, costs were paid towards the CLP road system design. On the next page, in the 2021 capital budget, revenues were received for tributes, and expenditures occurred on tributes, construction crew projects, and on design services for the roof repairs at the Phillips Rec Center. In the 2020 capital budget, probably 3/4 of the way down the page, there was activity on expenditures towards a half-ton pickup truck that was delivered, which the board previously voted to purchase in February 2021. And in the Crystal Lake section on water quality improvements. There was no activity in the 2029 capital budget, 2019 capital budget. We're not there yet, whoa.
Time travel.
2019 capital budget, there was no activity. In the 2018 capital budget, there was one item of activity, which was on expenditures for, from the ADA capital account for UPD on the ADA audit that we've begun. And there was also no activity in the 2017 capital budget. So with that, Derek and Andy have some updates for you on capital projects.
Okay, I can start with our upcoming ITEP project for Broadway Avenue. Our RFQ for engineering services was advertised and distributed in October. We received our submissions on November 1st. Tim, Derek, and I will be conducting interviews tomorrow and Friday on our shortlisted 3 firms that we have out of that pool. We're utilizing our QBS process for federally funded projects, and then after our interviews, we'll do our independent evaluations again to have our final firm to then move forward to developing a contract and then getting ultimate approval from IDOT. And so once we have that approval and the paperwork ready from IDOT, we'll take it to the board for the final action, which could be as soon as December. A lot of it's going to be dependent on how quick IDOT can turn things around on their end, so it may be January or even February until we can get our engineering firm under agreement. And then just as a reminder, the overall schedule on the project. So we'll look to have our engineer on board here in the next couple months. We'll look to do a bid within the IDOT bid letting windows next winter. So it could be towards the end of next year or early 2023. And then we aim to have construction start late spring, early summer of 2023. With our health and wellness facility, since our last board meeting, we received our final park grant agreement and have since executed our contract with Farnsworth for architectural services. Yesterday, we actually held a kickoff meeting with Farnsworth to begin developing the schematic design. And as you may recall in previous updates, one of our first steps once we had our park agreement in place was to begin developing an RFQ for construction manager services. And so we've done that. As of last Friday, we began advertising for it, and it's currently open for submissions right now. And then we are scheduled to receive final submissions by the end of this month, I believe November 29th, and then we'll be doing our evaluation with Farnsworth as part of our team as well. And then we'll be conducting interviews and selecting a firm probably mid-December, and then hope to have an agreement in front of the board at the January board meeting to get a construction manager as part of our team. Phillips Roofing, we had the contractor at Phillips towards the end of last week. They completed the shingle replacement portion. The TPO material, which is for that flat roofing, 2 small areas, is kind of a victim of supply chain issues. So we don't have a good date at this point of when the contractor will be able to come back and do that replacement, but we've been cautioned it may be months away, looking towards maybe even towards the end of next year.
Woo.
The contractor does also need to complete the gutters and downspouts, and so they'll probably be back on site in the next week to do that as well.
How does this work when they can't complete the entirety of the contract in a timely manner? Do we end up paying pro rata or something to them, or do they just sort of eat it until they can actually complete the project?
I believe they'll have their order in and price locked in, so we won't see any changes. We'll just see a change on
Right,
when they
but-
can actually get the
But do
material
they get a
delivered.
nickel from us before they actually
Well-
complete it?
We'll pay for the asphalt shingle portion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can split their invoicing to us, yeah.
That was itemized out enough that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
Okay.
that's what the insurance is covering. The flat membrane roof is not coming through insurance as it wasn't damaged as part of the hail.
I do have some pictures here. I actually have Blair and Phillips for our meeting tonight. So on Blair, kind of within the last month, they've been finishing up some of the concrete areas. Oops, sorry. Doing some backfilling and seeding, the corner ramp areas. They do have a few more small concrete areas they need to do, and it'll probably be done here in the next week. This is one of those concrete areas that was completed since our last meeting. This is around that seating area, elevated seating area for the tennis court. This is one of those concrete areas they still need to finish up. So there's a small bike pad that's kind of in this area down here, and then the construction entrance off of Pennsylvania they still need to pour. And then the foundation for the Sutu wall. And so that should all be concrete-wise done here in the next week or so. The Sutu wall, I do have an update on the delivery for that. We were originally told end of October, early November. Now we're being told early December. I'll let you know next meeting if that actually comes to fruition. And then this is that same area there by the seating area. This is before they were installing the new water fountain that has a bottle filler as well. That actually was finished with the installation yesterday morning. And then kind of exciting, I think, is the new block seating. And so these are concrete blocks that are colored and have kind of looks like a texture to them as well. But you can see the color kind of works well with our stamped and colored concrete, and as well as the blues that we have elsewhere in the park or will have with the challenge course and the playground. And these are actually made by the same company that did the bags at Crystal Lake Park and the picnic tables as well, out of DeKalb. Sycamore? Yeah.
It isn't going to encourage anybody to sit long.
Right,
Looks like skate park features.
yeah, we hope.
So here's kind of another angle from
Oh, yeah,
that,
that's good.
where you can kind of see how they look with the different concrete treatments there as well. And then in the background, Keith's progress on the playground. And then I kind of got a little closer image so you can see how much he's completed here in the last couple weeks.
I've forgotten, are there any shade structures beside the trees around that seating area, or is that just bake in the sun there?
Sun, there's no shade structure
Okay.
itself.
There are
And trees are planted.
some accessible benches that'll be going in as well.
Oh, good.
The blocks were kind of intended to be more informal seating for some of our kind of tweener, teenage, young adult group that we know are close by.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I was thinking of my own posterior on that hard surface. I'm glad they're there.
And then on
A numb bum.
Phillips, I think this is from the first day they were out there starting to get stuff removed from the site, shingles and stuff, and then prepping off one of the wings here for the new shingles. And then I tried to get some pictures where the sun was on the shingles a little bit better. These are the new shingles, so you can kind of see the color we have selected there and the look. And then a different angle of the front. It's kind of hard to see on the screen.
Oh, that's the new sculpture. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not new, but.
No, but new to
New
here.
to Phillips,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It looks good.
Yeah, I walked by it the
Looks
other
good,
night.
yeah,
It
it
looks
looks
awesome.
really empty at Meadowbrook right now, but
Oh.
that'll change. Just a sign.
Okay, well, that's all I had. Unless there's some questions, I'm happy to answer on anything else.
Come on, Chip.
I will, you all will note that in the board report, I wrote up a little bit about the construction manager options. The construction manager at risk is the option that Farnsworth is encouraging us to consider. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be reviewing that with Matt Deering. It was completely coincidental, but at the legal symposium this year, there was a presentation by a legal firm on different construction methods. And the construction manager at risk was reported to be on the increase, currently used in about 25% of projects and increasing. And we found a number of park districts that have used it recently on large projects like our own. Farnsworth feels like in this age of COVID, it's a really well-suited project delivery method because it affords us some certainty about our maximum price, but also flexibility as we move into design and construction. And so we'll find out more about it tomorrow as we meet with Matt Deering and then share it with you all with our final recommendation.
Good.
Any other questions or comments?
I did have one question. I noticed that there was 20,000 out of the 2020 capital budget on water quality improvements. I wondered what that covered.
20,000 in the last period.
Yeah, $20,562.
Yep.
In the 2020?
We might have had, that might have been our
2020.
total alum treatments for the lake for the year.
Okay.
The
Yeah.
last period might have just been the 5,000 or so. but-
Okay.
Yeah, it was 17,000 last fiscal year and 20,000 from May through October of this
Okay.
fiscal year.
I thought it was just in the last.
Yeah, so that was all of the alum and the 3 days that they did herbicide and the manual removal of the
Okay.
algae as well.
Algae harvesting.
Okay.
And
It
how,
looks better.
It has looked a little better, yeah.
so are you happy with the results of the Alamo, or is it too early to tell yet?
I think it's still probably too early to fully tell. I think this year it's been a little bit better than the past 5 years probably, but there's certainly days or weeks that it doesn't look good and it's got full coverage.
There's been a lot of disturbance there too.
Yeah.
It's looked dreadful a lot of the time.
Not to put too fine a point on it.
Well,
Well, but you're right, it did.
It
Yep.
did.
So Andy and I met with a group of students, was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've got a program called Algae, and one of the things that they have a lab they're working with is converting algae to biodegradable plastic. We very encouraging for them to pursue it. It sounds like their tenure with this lab may be somewhat short-lived, and so we're hopeful that the lab manager will be interested in picking it up. We also talked with them a lot about the history of what we've been doing out there, and you all may recall that our environmental engineer on the project said that it's typical the first year after you do a big restoration project like this, where you do a lot of grading,
Yeah.
you stir up a lot of sediments, for you to have more algae. In our case, it's not actually algae, it's duckweed and water meal, mostly water meal, and that by year 2 it quiets down. So we're still hopeful. I mean, we have all sorts of treatments in place, the floating wetlands, the emergent wetlands that are establishing the rock pool structures in the water feature. We've got stormwater cyclone devices that pull out sediment, improvements to the detention off of the Carl parking lot. But if we still find that we have issues next year, it's probably not an ongoing source issue, more of a legacy issue. And the only silver bullet that I've heard of is extracting all the sediment. Fortunately, they've got new technologies. You don't have to drain the lake entirely. There are Vector systems that can pull it out, but it comes with a pretty hefty price tag. And so we wanted to exhaust other possibilities and certainly address some of the incoming pollutants before we start to address any legacy pollutants.
I think staff is willing to recommend that next treatment, certainly if we don't see improvements. Obviously, all the work we've invested, it's not a surprise there could be 40 years of, sediment in the bottom of that lake.
Yep.
So, but as Derek said, we've done a lot of other really great things. Let's see how it goes, and we certainly have other tools in the toolbox.
We'll just make it a feature.
We can call it Green Lake.
Well, it wouldn't be wrong.
So, any other questions? Then let's move on to the executive director's report.
Sure, thank you. Starting out, I just want to say a general thanks to all of our volunteers that we get. I was volunteering working at the CSR Cupcake 5K race, and just really impressed with the amount of volunteers. I got to talk to several, asked why they volunteer, what they do. The two I was stationed with, one works with the Champaign Park District quite a bit at the Virginia Theater, and certainly learned about our activities and wanted to dial into what the Park District in Urbana is doing. The other was a young girl, woman I sent on to Corky already, and staff, just really hard worker, just loves volunteering. In fact, I told her about Read Across America, and she's a student at Academy in high school, and had already sent me an email full with groups of people that she would want to bring and help volunteer. So it's just great to hear that people care. They're willing to, connect with us, and then as long as we're doing outreach and making sure we're connecting with people, I think we can continue to get good volunteers. So again, it's just always encouraging.
So you were recruiting, really?
Well, it was funny because I thought that's another reason to be there. 'Cause
Sure,
you
of
could
course,
certainly
yeah.
And they were just asking, I thought, oh, this is a golden opportunity
Yeah,
to
no
recruit
kidding.
some more volunteers
Yeah.
for us.
That's great.
So they both seemed very interested, and one followed up already, and the other said, I'm going to go check your website out, see what events I said, Turkey Trot's coming up. So anyway, they're out there, and certainly volunteers love to volunteer, so we couldn't do what we do without their help. And that event was certainly a huge benefit to have a lot of volunteer help. Moving on, just wanted to call out the DEI report, a lot of exciting things in the report. In addition, we've had conversation with Dr. Wanda Ward. She's leading the call to action in the Community Compact to End Racism in Champaign County. We're going to be putting together just a memo of resources that the Urbana Park District could provide in any of that work. So what facilities we have, what staffing, in our case, Urbana would certainly be of interest. I think there's a lot of excitement about that. So I'll be getting together with Corky, and we'll be putting some notes together and send off to that group. I think we're probably at that stage where there'll be the university-led things, and then what can we get going in the community. So it's very exciting and just fun to work, at another level with others. And I think they're learning from us and really see us as a valued partner. So I think it's a good fit. So we'll continue to look at that, see what comes out of that.
Do
yeah.
you think there's going to be money that will come to us locally from the governor's, was it $250 bazillion?
I
for
certainly
his
hope so.
crime?
I certainly hope so. I think there's some soft dollars out there that
Mhm.
certainly could be available for programming and things like that to actually get things, done and moving.
And how does one latch onto that dough?
Well, a couple of different ways. One way, we're working with Corky's had a couple of meetings already on the People, Parks, and Power grant program through the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation.
Yeah.
And so there's an interest in us working, probably a focus in Urbana. So there's grant programs like that. We hope there's other rollouts. I was talking to the mayor Friday at the ribbon cutting event at the KRT, and I think they have access in their annual budgets that they could release to not-for-profits.
Yeah, that's what I
That
wondered.
could work. So we think there's going to probably be more, resources that
Okay,
could be
so the
available.
city's on the lookout. We're not the
Right.
only ones who are having to pay attention to where
And
some of
then
that money is.
we're working with all of our DEI partners, anybody that would have access to funds, we want to zero in and see how we can work together to maximize what they could get, what we have, and so forth. So it's probably a good time to have things lined up and
Yep,
ready to go, because if the money comes, we want to be ready for it.
Mhm.
Just a few new connections in the DEI area. I think we're working with Reverend Willie Comer. I think his big hope is indoor connections at the new health and wellness facility and get indoor midnight basketball rolling. Reverend Terrence Thomas, we want to continue working with on any nonviolent violence reduction programs. And a new connection, not new to organizationally, but the Don Moyers Boys and Girls Club. We haven't had a big history working with them, and as at least as deep as Champaign has. So our outreach, first few calls, they're very excited and would love to see a connection in Urbana. So I look forward to that. For the UPDAC meeting that's coming up, Tracy Parsons will be joining us. UPDAC, if you remember, a few months ago had asked to get an update on the community violence, what's going on, and so we thought, let's have Tracy come. We'll also have some reps from U of I from the diversity lab that'll be coming that did our study.
Oh, good.
First study, I think they're gonna kind of do an introductory, hello, and tell us what's going on, and then certainly our own efforts, which are pretty long and deep. So we'll kind of see what time we have left in that meeting, but should be a good discussion. Let's see, I mentioned CSR Cupcake 5K was really a terrific day, just beautiful weather. I think we had about 375 participants, which was really good because the previous year, last year we didn't have it, but the previous year it was in that range. So to be able to kind of get back up to those numbers was just terrific. Obviously the great weather, I think we had a lot of on-site, registrations that day, so grateful for that, but went really smooth. Everyone had a great time. Appreciate the good work they do. As you know, Clark Lindsay Village is expanding. We've had discussions and on-site visits to see what's going on, and there's a aspect of a landscape improvement. Derek and I will be meeting Friday with them to talk about what I would call the new entrance from Clark Lindsay into Meadowbrook Park. The other one was near Tango. Now it's moving a little bit further north. It'll be across what I call our key property. That's that little piece of land that juts into Clark Lindsay. And doesn't give us a nice clean edge. So I think that'll probably be the access route, but we see a nice opportunity for some very high quality landscape. We'd love to see some public art and, part of that solution. So talking with their staff, getting a high vision, committing to that, our next steps. So we'll see how that work progresses. I would predict good things. Got an update from Janet Sosby. She attended the last Age Friendly, the Center for Health, Aging, and Disability group. Had kind of some bad news with that group. I think COVID has been very unkind. Several of the participating agencies reported that they can't send staff any longer to serve on that board. The Shambana grandparents website has now been shut down. There just wasn't enough, traffic to keep that a viable option. So we feel badly about that. But nonetheless, the group's still committed. The ones that remain will keep working together, and I just really urge us to continue with that. It's super important. As you probably all know, senior adults, at least in the U.S., are the most discriminated group across the board. So there's, with good reason, that we should be concerned about older adults in the country and in this county. So I still predict good outcomes, but just a little disappointing when people can't participate. We understand why. They're short-staffed and they can't do a lot of extra things. But fortunately, we have good staff that want to serve, and I think, we'll still continue and see how far that goes. Kickapoo Rail Trail, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony for the big bridge last Friday. I think there was a little bit of satisfied folks. Basically, it was an IDOT event because IDOT paid for most of the bridge, and a DNR event. So that meant about 50 people, obviously due to COVID, was in a very select group. Many of our other locals that have been very, very active with that project were not invited. I think there was some bad feelings about that, but what I try to suggest is, why don't we plan for our own local event in the spring? We can do whatever we want to do and invite as many people. Probably the comparison was the big kickoff a couple of years ago in St. Joe, when we had, a couple thousand people right downtown there. Very exciting atmosphere. So I think that was sort of the vision. It wasn't like that at all. It was the Secretary of Transportation and the DNR director. I made very good use of my time, though. I had an excellent conversation with the new DNR director, Colleen Callahan. Basically did what I could to sell her on trails, how important OSLAD is. She's very aware that it was almost swept. So we talked at good length about that and, why did governors do that? They've done it from both parties. Reminded her it's dedicated funding and that it's been a part of almost every major park development in Urbana. So we can't look at a facility or a trail without that. I think she really understands that. And I just further encouraged her, if you need any help with trails, downstate, or people that know about that, please call on us. We're ready, we're available. So I think they got a very good impression of our area as far as the locals, that were there and are committed to that. I think the the IDOT director was very eloquent, talked about future grants. So I hope, and we hope to believe, there'll be more, transportation dollars in this new infrastructure, that would relate to local trails. So made the pitches, hope they were receptive. I think they were. But nonetheless, we'll work on another event for our locals when it warms up here. It's a beautiful facility. If you haven't been over there, it's all open now. There's a small parking area just to the west of the bridge. Or there's other areas along that Route 150 corridor where you could pull off and probably find safe parking. Number of people rode their bikes over from Urbana, which I'm always impressed. They had to leave. I would have had to leave the day before to probably get there, but they rode all the way. So it was a very exciting day, and although a small crowd, we certainly represented. I think you all received the information of the fundraiser that we're doing with Sleepy Creek. We don't have as many items, but I've heard we've raised, at least pledge-wise, well over 1,000, and it keeps going up in the numbers. Now, our last,
I didn't,
I can send the links out. I thought I had sent that.
Something, I haven't seen anything.
I thought a week ago or so when it first came out, I forwarded it to the board, but I'll send it again.
Okay.
I almost sent it tonight, but I think I already did, so my bad. But it goes through the
Well,
18th
maybe just said it,
of November, so there's
fine,
plenty
okay.
of time. And as you know, silent auctions, all the action happens at the end, when the prices are at their highest rate. But there's a lot of good items, some Park District things in that mix, so pleased about that. Next Friday, the steering committee will meet in Urbana. We're going to kind of tour our terminus, few sites in Urbana, so as people come from Danville this way, they'll be able to see and visualize what we have in store and what we have planned at Weaver Park. So excited about that. And an excellent Friends group meeting, and maybe one of our best last week. Another good turnout at Homer Lake. A lot of committed people. We got pretty far through the process, moving into, draft bylaws, and I think that group's going to be up and running. So Diane Banta is our facilitator. She's a retired National Park Service planner. She's probably drawing her work down, and I think the goal was to, volunteer to help our locals to get this group up and running, and then certainly she'll step off and let the group take on. So we're real pleased about that. I think there'll be a lot of volunteer efforts coming out of that. Andy covered all the Blair stuff, but we did have a donor call last week with Corky, Derek, and I, and Andy working with a couple of potential donor families on some of the additional items at Blair Park, namely the pavilion and the tennis seating area, that little plaza. So with any good luck and fortune, we'll get some interest in donor side of things and be able to add to that wonderful story at Blair Park.
Had this come through the foundation fundraising emails? Is
One
that
half
correct?
on the foundation effort, and
Yeah.
then we have another group that's interested that Park District has been working with for
Great.
over a year, and we'll see how far that goes. Certainly the capacity and interest seems to be there, so we'll hope for good things. And continue to provide information and meet and talk with them. Just a short mention on the leadership's efforts on the affiliate groups. As you may recall, Park District, as long as I think I've worked here, we've had a list of what we called affiliates. And they were, from my perspective, it was a way many, many years ago to justify groups that we could give free or reduced space or use of buildings or some opportunity in a park site. And generally, the old model was balanced on effort that they might do in a volunteer capacity that we could equalize in some sort of monetary equivalent of space, time, or place in a park. I think what leadership's recommending now is so much has changed with that. There's so many more community groups. What we're basically saying, if we have invested staff working with a group and the superintendent, who's the ultimate supervisor in those work groups, would approve a use, we want to be able to do that and not create lots of complicated equations and ways for, what were intended for a Boy Scout or Girl Scout troop to get maybe a free space to meet in the nature center, an opportunity that we can leverage up and start working with a lot of different groups. We're also cognizant of, fair and balanced equations, but we want to find a way that doesn't create a lot of barriers to saying no to people before we can get to yes. So let's go out and get as many groups that we can that are producing mutual benefits for the Park District, and let's sort of award those on that basis. So we'll continue to look at that and review that. I believe we'll still have affiliates listed, but it won't be sort of that old antiquated equation base. to, say yes if a group can meet. There's so many groups that we work with now just in the DEI area that may not be able to provide funds or necessarily organize and provide equivalent volunteer outreach, but we still want to offer something or say yes or be a part of their event. So it's a really way we're looking at it is how do we extend what we do working with other groups? So I think that's a refreshing approach. I think it solves a lot of problems, and I think it'll make more and deeper connections for the Park District.
So how would this work, say, the Archers is the one that comes to,
Now, they have a lease arrangement with
okay,
that.
so that's a lease,
So
so
that's a
that's
little
not,
bit
that's
different,
right, okay,
but it's
all right.
probably like, I know all of us have our groups, we could all
I
come
can
up
give a
with.
good
Go ahead,
example.
I'll let
okay.
you, go ahead.
The Dream House, about
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, they
Mhm.
did their
These the
year-
backpack people?
Dream House.
Dream House,
It's
Tracy Dace. It's DRE.
Them on the backpack.
It was the backpack,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they were part of that as well.
okay, all right.
They've also
the
done
same
some
bubble.
volunteer trash pickup and stuff this summer with their kids that come to them.
Mm-hmm,
It's a small version, I guess, of like Don Moyer's Boys and Girls Club.
mm-hmm,
And so this couple weeks ago, because we've been partnering with them, they were looking for a space to have their annual silent auction play day type event. And so we did that at Phillips.
Mhm.
And so the way that works, and very similar to an affiliate, if we have staff there, then they don't need to pay for staff costs. But if we have to have staff there, then we charge them the staff cost and not so much our building rental.
yep, yep.
And it's because we're a partner with them, and we have
Mhm.
lots of new types of partnerships where we want to have that ability to, I mean, I think we have that ability now, but the problem in a lot of these cases is the phone call is going to our front desk staff.
Yep.
And so we need to create a process, which we're working on, that, okay, you can fill out this form,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it's a park, then Derek would sign off on it. If it's a facility,
Right.
then I would hear about it and sign off on it. A
Mhm.
lot of times before, I never heard about them, so,
Gotcha.
there was a lack of a better term, a black and white reason if you can get that space or you can't.
Mm-hmm.
So this way it's more, what's our relationship, what are we doing with that group, and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the direction we're heading with it.
Right. Obviously, a group like the U of I, when they're working with us on the call to action, if they wanted to host an event, or be able to use the Nature Center as a site, well, we certainly wouldn't, hope the answer is, well, you can rent it. Obviously, we want to be a part of that. We want to have staff there and, so again, it's sort of an extension of what we can do. It just got to the point where it was so rigid before, unless you could formulaically work through the system, you were out. We want to create on-ramps
Right.
and say yes, but still do it in a fair and balanced way.
Yeah.
So I think, we're just on the cusp of, starting to work in this way. And I think we started to work that way informally, really, a few years ago. We found, hey, we need this. We have to say yes to this because this is a really good thing. And there's not an easy way to create a formula that makes somebody pay for something that we're going to benefit or our residents benefit from. Certainly we can evaluate that, and if there's any, concerns, we can address them. But we're very excited about that fresh approach and empowering our staff to get out there and make those connections. Because if the answer is, well, we got to charge you and you can't afford it,
Right.
we can't do it then. And so finding ways around those without incurring lots of new cost yourself. Obviously, that's got to work in that direction. So we'll keep you updated on that. Let's see, I think Derek and staff mentioned health and wellness, but I was just going to mention we had a terrific kickoff meeting with all of our management staff, and we just have a really savvy team that's going to work on this. All of our successes, I think, have come from working at those wider staff layers, because that's how you learn about how their end of the aspect goes, or where the mistakes or the assumptions can trip you up. So we had a very good kickoff. I would compare it to Crystal Lake Family Aquatic Center. You know, we had a very big, wide team approach. So everybody brought their best game. We covered all the bases, eliminated as many problems, found new solutions and creative approaches to designing a facility that I think paid off. And if we had have just left it, the leadership team in charge, obviously there's opportunity to miss things or, you know, create disconnects. So excited about that and was very well done. Just an update from Champaign County First. I've mentioned numerous times our interest in high-speed rail, and we're constantly focused on that. There was a new report that was just put out by the Federal Rail Administration that we discussed at our last meeting entitled Midwest Regional Rail Plan, where they basically commit on paper to which lines are going to get improvements. Well, the next concern is why are those lines identified the way they are in the certain routes? Because in this particular map, and we saw it on a previous map, the I-57 corridor from Chicago to Champaign, Urbana to Memphis is a dashed line. It's not even on that map. And so the concerns, as you can imagine, everywhere from the U of I saying we're investing a lot in the DPI in Chicago, trying to get that a lot of that's predicated on quick, easy rail access to, you know, Urbana. And so what we're very concerned about that. While it's not a commitment for high-speed rail, it's improving those lines. So we're reading between the next line, well, if we've invested in improving these lines, why don't we just make those the high-speed rail routes and we're done? That would basically run it through Bloomington Normal, St. Louis, and bypass us completely. And we're also able to offer dog legs to Indianapolis to the east. So we think we have a very viable, and St. Louis for that matter, by another route. So we're continuing to track that. We're having an action day. We want to make sure all of our state legislators are aware of this. So we want to get with Senator Durbin, Duckworth, and Mr. Davis and make sure that they're aware, as well as our local legislators. So we're trying to arrange that at the Illinois terminal yet this year and get everybody in the room and share those maps and make sure, is everyone good with that we're being excluded, and what can we do about that? So it's still time to, you know, get things shifted, but there's now been 2 maps generated that completely bypasses. We thought we raised issues the last time around, and apparently it didn't work. So, and the fact may be it will go another direction, and we won't have that advantage. But we need to make sure we're fighting and making our voices known and selling our best assets, because we have multiple universities on that line as well. Not to say if you took up the major population center of Chicago to St. Louis, you know, we all understand the populations in those, you know, connections, but there are many tangible.
There's just 2 big nodes as opposed to all the.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so we want to make sure everyone's aware. And then if they still go forward with those approaches, you know, we won't have a lot of say-so, but let's sell our best assets in that occasion. Last thing I wanted to spend a little bit of time on is some interest at Crestview Park. We've had a lot of discussions about what's happening at Crestview Park. Long history there for me personally. One of the first master plans I did way back in 1987 as a student project was at that site. Professor Walt Keith, who was a board member on this board for about 10 years, led that, you know, initiative, and that was my first experience working in that neighborhood. Since that time, we've kind of rebounded and been working in the Silverwood and kind of kept our eye on that park. And we think it has a lot of potential. What I've been talking with our staff about and with our Rotary team and some of the neighborhood groups that are interested is the idea of kind of creating a peace park where we have a facility and a park in Urbana that's focused on nonviolence. We have a very interesting neighborhood and community around there. There's single-family housing, variety of apartments, student housing, public housing, daycares, commercial buildings and zones, and senior housing that's right adjacent to the site. So we have no other really intensely diverse park in a location like that. So it sets itself right up. And again, to the south of the park, we've been working in the Silverwood neighborhood. You know, there's a lot of critical need there. I think there's a number of area of need in that neighborhood. So we would like to go through a planning process to really flesh that out of what could that be? How would that look and what would we do there? But the idea is, could we create a very meaningful place that is a place you could go to celebrate or to grieve or to remember or to get some positive focused attention on why people are shooting each other daily in the streets. We don't have anything in Urbana. I know the Heritage Trail effort that started to try to create linkages around the community based on, African American history is great, but it's all happening in Champaign. My understanding is there'll be later connections in Urbana, but I don't know how many years or what that will look like. So we're trying to look at what else can we do to create some alternative messages, create place, and give the neighbors that live around there a little more hope and attention. Not meaning we're not paying attention, but focus on their concerns of neighborhood violence and what's going on right around the park. So we're trying to build a coalition of interest. I mentioned that People Power, the People Parks and Power grant. That might be one piece, or Nancy suggested there could be some other dollars that might be out there for programming, perhaps for development. So we'd like to share that with the board, see if there's general support for that notion, and then we'll continue to work and get information. I presented at an urban planning class last Thursday, and the students have been working in that part of the Philo Road area of Urbana. This particular group was focused on the park, and so they invited myself and Barbara Jones, who's our Peace Committee chair for the Urbana Rotary. And so we both came as part of their presentation just to talk what we were doing and some of these ideas, and certainly there's a lot of student interest. They had already done a bunch of social mapping. I think that's something we'd probably want to take a fresh run at. But the idea is you start to identify who lives there and what are their unique situations and characteristics, what are the actual physical and cultural resources available, or that could be an asset, things like Salt and Light. There's other churches in that neighborhood, so you can imagine a mapping exercise that starts to identify those resources and then continue to work through a process that would physically define a park in a new way. It's a very underutilized park. I know in talking with Derek in operations, the current, third garden scheme, it's not exciting. There's no there. I don't know in the last 5 years, 10 years, talked to anybody that's visited there or made a comment about that. So again, there could still be a garden component. Maybe it becomes more of a peace-based public art, artful activities, cultural programming that could happen in that neighborhood that, is still at a neighborhood level. People could easily access, walk over. So I think that's sort of the direction we're recommending, and wanted to make sure the board was comfortable with that, option. Obviously, that would give us a long time between tonight and when a final plan is developed, but certainly creating that opportunity for the community, I think would be a very good move. And we don't have any other alternatives. So everybody I've shared the idea with thinks it's very exciting and very cutting edge, and they can't think of other places. So one of the things I recommend we do, I've got a short list already, 3 or 4 sites, but kind of look at precedents. What else is out in the country around? Are there other similar, facilities or parks like this? We know there's other types of memorial parks and survivor parks and, those type of things, but can we catalog those? What are the unique aspects? What design principles can we pull from them, and how can we repackage it in a really interesting project at Crestview Park? Aside from that, I don't think there are any other real plans or ideas or, notions of what could happen there. So I would, again, staff would urge, the board to consider this. It's a great way to get UPDAC involved. I think there's numerous neighborhood groups, we could tap in and really build on this. Something that I think the rec staff continues to echo, and I keep hearing it, is all that's nice and fun and neat, but we got to make sure we have regular activities and programming that's happening. Because you can do one thing once a year, big, excitement, but then what happens the rest of the year? And so that's where these affiliates and other partners come in. Could we put together a calendar of events so there's something throughout each month, or many things during the warmer outdoor months? Could we find a relationship with Salt and Light where we could gain access to indoor space, or some of the other businesses or churches, in that corridor, so that we could go from outdoor to indoor and still have places to meet and do activities. So it's a very grassroots, kind of finding solutions, along the way, if you will, and still fit that neighborhood, keep everybody excited of what's happening at the park. Because probably my prediction is if we don't go that direction, it'll be how long before we're coming back saying, well, the garden needs to be revitalized. There's not a lot. We just need to get a bunch of money to go in and kind of spruce up. So we're trying to find a more dynamic outcome for that park and what it could provide us. So I'll give a little pause there, and if there's any feedback or comments or questions, certainly would entertain them. I've shared it with leadership. I think there's general agreement with that. Probably our big concern, and I'll state it right now, we have a lot of projects, and I'm concerned. We've got health and wellness, Prairie Play, we're in Blair Park real serious, and then all the other rec programs, all the other capital programs. So finding carve-out time and space is probably the hardest thing right now. So what I continue to talk to our partners are, we can probably do this, but we got to do it at a pace we can keep our staff involved at a level that doesn't overload them. And certainly, I don't want to necessarily say, well, maybe the library could do the physical planning. Well, that's not how we want to do it either. We have a job and a role for them, but we certainly need to be the principals. And the feedback I got from our meeting today, there needs to be a lead group like the Park District that could actually realize these improvements and sort of oversee it and make sure that it goes to good use. You know, if you outsourced it to well-meaning groups, you might end up with something very different. So again, that's sort of the proposal, and would love to get any feedback. It's a new idea. Maybe you need to think about it for a while and give it some thought. We could certainly come back, next month under commissioner comments or add it to an agenda. So we don't really have anything to share tonight, but certainly future things, getting some feedback, working in the park, doing a survey, talking with the local businesses, talking with our other partners that might have other resources along this way to how do we transform that park. And I think it's been long enough since we've really done a whole lot other than the playground, which was done, 7 or 8 years ago. We haven't really done a whole lot. I'm not being critical, there's just not a lot to work with there. And this might give us a whole new leg on what I'd call, a different level of programming in a neighborhood park. So I will stop talking now.
Is there a possibility that we could work with the neighborhood groups in a real planning session?
Yes, that would be
Because I would think the input from the neighbors, and what just sort of flashed through my mind here was that maybe we need a nature place south. Because my feeling is that area, there aren't a lot of play places. And I think that that's one of the best things we can do for kids, up to, like 14, 15, is to find a way for them to be able to engage in some activity out of doors.
We agree.
So I don't know, that's just my thought, but I would think that the neighborhood feedback, and then there must be studies, so where would, I go to look to find out what's successful, because I think of that as a sort of urban area.
Yeah,
What are
I agree.
successful urban
I totally
parks?
agree with that. Yeah,
What makes a good urban park? What does that?
I think those are really good models because you have it's a kind of an interesting mix, but it's a little more urbanized with the retail area there.
Yeah.
The retail area is kind of
Right.
downtrodden at this point.
Right,
So.
and I think so. How do we revitalize those, park connections? There was a time when I think the Y was interested in Urbana,
Yeah.
developing a facility, and they were looking in that neighborhood. But my point is, the reason they were looking there is because it's a high hope neighborhood. It's an area that is underserved, but it has a lot of potential to serve a lot of people. And if you're doing that kind of work, then you're really, doing some good stuff. So their effort didn't realize, but maybe ours can. And while our health and wellness facility is not too far from there, I'd say within an easy walk, those kind of connections and improvements will go a long way.
Yeah, sorry, but that could certainly provide our, sort of the outdoor counterpoint
Right.
to the indoor health and wellness, and someplace that a kid could go, when he was able to, or she was able to ride a bike to the park, but not all the way over to health and wellness, because I'm guessing that there are a lot of kids
Right.
in that neighborhood. And
There are.
yeah, I remember seeing a kid, he was just riding his bike. Either he was waiting for somebody, or he just didn't have anything else to do, which was my thought. And he's just kind of riding his bike around that parking lot, and I thought, there should be something here that this kid could do. And there isn't much.
Right, we agree. And there's not a lot of good alternatives.
Yeah.
We've also heard a few notes some of the residents go to Larson Park, and so we'd like to kind of look at that park as well, like what does that offer? What does this opportunity offer? They're very close. And
Well,
then what does the
and
neighborhood-
there's also Loman Park, which,
I agree.
you know, I mean, it's divided by Philo Road, which is fairly high traffic, but
Right.
at the same time,
Right.
distance-wise, is there some way to do things that can work with 2 or 3 of those parks?
I agree.
And somehow
Yeah.
stay connected, because there plenty of stuff going on to the east of Philo Road.
Right, we
Yeah.
agree with that.
Yeah,
And I think,
yeah.
you know, we have other
Nothing good.
partners like the library and the Forest Preserve. They're looking for opportunities to connect, you know, to their people too that pay taxes and support their services. But they don't have good outlets, you know, so that's where we have an advantage, because we do have the flexible outdoor space, and we know how to manage that. So there could be, again, a whole list of groups coming in. It may not be us, but maybe it's the library's month, and they're gonna do a story walk or some other activity. The Forest Preserve is starting to realize, or at least we're hearing from leadership, they serve urban people too, but they don't have a lot of inroads to actually, you know, you
Right,
have to go
right.
out to a preserve. So how do we create opportunities for them to deliver service that benefits our residents?
Right.
And we do a partnership approach. So I think those are really exciting ideas, you know, that could be explored. They'll all take resource and time and effort, but I think the benefit could be, you know, untold if we started to impact some lives and create new opportunities and new connections.
Well, I think too that we want to look at, you know, just look over the summer, sort of daily, every other daily use. So, you know, you can go to that park and there's something you can do, whether the library is going to be doing a program in the afternoon,
Right,
or, you know, the Forest Preserve District is bringing snakes on Thursday,
right,
so you know I
Exactly.
won't be there.
right,
You know,
right,
but, you know, I can ride my bike over there and there's something to do, and it's not the same old play structure to climb and
Right.
swing on, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, and I think that's an extraordinary challenge for just a relatively small piece of ground.
right.
But, I mean, Michael's idea, maybe, you know, maybe we can
Right,
kind of link them in some way, or have, you
absolutely.
know, sort of a graduated, so it's an age, so we've got the ages separated a little bit more, so that
Right.
there's, you know, kids might be more likely to go to Loman.
Right,
And, I mean, that's an extraordinarily unutilized space.
right. And with Colorado, at least the
Yeah,
portion of the
that's not
trail
too
built,
terrible.
there's easier connection. Maybe one of our challenges, how do we create a wayfinding or a safe routes, you know, approach to getting
Yep, yep.
people easily to those parks, or take a radius approach?
Mm-hmm,
What all can you do in a 5-minute walk? So that's one of the things I was suggesting our Rotary and staff teams do, is let's go visit the park, analyze it,
Yep,
kind of surveil the neighborhood, start talking to people.
yep,
You know,
yep.
Sam Smith, that is with Cranert in their outreach group, you know, his idea, because he was in the class also, because they're working with Cranert on this, you know, his ideas are always grand, but I think you'll get the idea of, if we could find somebody to buy one of the apartments, we move into the apartments and we start doing a year-long charrette with the neighborhood, get to know people, think of what kind of connections. Well, that's probably on that farther edge of,
Yeah,
but I think we all see his point. It's getting to know people, making those connections, and then you'll know what the best moves are, and you sort of really have a community-based input model there. And so probably won't be able to do that, or the park district probably won't be able to do that, but what else can we do? And so I think this idea of engagement and investment and reinvestment is really exciting and probably coming to time. So again, if you have thoughts, comments, we'd love to hear it.
oh yeah, put me on that committee. Yeah, I like the idea. I think there's a lot, I mean, you could have an art part, you could have a
Right.
activity, you know, more activity
Right.
part, you could have a nature part, you could,
And I just thought of it now too, but one goal how do we get maybe residents there to learn and know about other resources that we have and get them to other places? If you just didn't know what's at, you know, the Phillips Rec Center, why would you go there? And so if we found compelling ways to, you know, offer or get people connected, might be a good idea.
And those parks are really close to, the park's really close to my house as well. So
Okay.
I'm very interested in that. And then I was wondering if you mentioned that you were like looking at other examples of like
Yes.
peace parks.
Yes, and survivor parks and, you know, not, when I say memorial parks, not, you know, like the 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you can look at those as bigger precedents, but, you know, what's at the neighborhood or community park level that we can look and find. So I've got a short list. If you think of other places, just send me a note and let me know. So I think, again, everybody we've shared the idea with is very interested. It compels people to want to be involved. And there's nowhere else like that in the area. So I've shared it with the Champaign County Coalition. Everybody was very interested. Shared it with Dr. Ward today when we talked. She thought it was a very novel idea. You know, to what level the university would be involved, I'm not sure, but certainly if we came up with ideas, we're working with groups in the trauma recovery, you know, resilience group, you know, maybe there's opportunities for us to focus there, you know, in some of their work and how we can extend that. So that's what I had in my report. Can answer any questions. I'm certain we'll revisit this once we get moving. If, again, I'm sensing there's general interest in at least continuing the idea.
Ooh, I'm thinking.
That's all I had, Michael.
Okay, that's all?
Tried to talk fast.
Turn over your folder, see if there's anything on the back side.
Yep, I think that's it.
Well, that was good.
Okay. Moving on to the president's report, I don't have anything specific to bring up other than coming meetings. Tim has already mentioned the UPDAC meeting with the Community Coalition updates on the 16th of November. We have our special CUSR joint board meeting, which is on site at the new CUSR location. So, and that's at 5:30 on December 2nd. And
Yeah.
it takes a while to get out there.
Well, and my phone told me that it was the new Leonard Center, so I kind of drove around until I saw Howie Shine's license plate, and I thought, okay, this must be it. So it's the smaller building.
The original one.
The original.
Yes,
Yeah.
right, right.
What is the address? Does
It,
anyone know?
that won't help you. I think it's 2012. Is it something like?
We can send it out again
Yeah,
if that's
but
helpful
it,
to you.
it might help to
Maybe
drive
somebody
by
has
it
it
in the
right now.
daytime. That's the trouble, that it's dark.
But
Yeah.
what's the old facility? I don't even remember.
It's a small one. It's not their great big new Leonard Center.
It's the old Leonard
It's the
Center.
It's the old
Old
Leonard Center,
Leonard
yeah.
Center.
Yeah.
But I think it's almost like the two buildings have the same number of street address. I mean, it was very odd because I put in what you
Okay.
sent, and it's trying to get me to go into the parking lot
Okay.
in the new building. So it's not
Well,
straightforward
and
for
that
getting in.
is the proper parking lot to park there. That is, so that would maybe be correct.
But it was across, there's,
It says
It's across the street.
12 Sangamon Drive, and my map is showing it on the north side.
on the
of
north side? Okay, because, yeah, all right, so maybe it's,
And I think their official parking lot is on the south side. That's joined with the pool and the new Leonard.
Right,
The
right.
other parking that's right next to their building is actually Jefferson Schools parking.
yeah, it was,
We're not,
CUSR Center.
yeah, CUSR Center.
Okay.
And I think after 5, if there's no school events, you can park in the school lot.
right, right.
Right there, but it's very easy and there's a very safe crosswalk, you know, just across Crescent Drive right there.
Yep, yeah, it was the building that I was having trouble with, but
Yep.
I did get there.
And then December 7 is our study session. Planned topics are the mission and vision review and priority projects report for the Parks Foundation. And then on the 14th of December, we have our regular meeting. And so we have goals review, action to accept the annual meeting calendar, action to abate property taxes. That's just a annual housekeeping action we have to take. Review and accept the priority projects report to the foundation that we will have looked at the study session. And an important one, closing on the annual bond sale. And I see also on here is approve updates to the safety manual. So
If
it's,
there are any.
pardon?
If there are any.
If there are any. Okay, so it isn't that there are specific known ones coming down the pike. Okay, and that's all I had to bring up in that regard. Moving on to liaison reports. The Finance Study Group actually has not met since we last reported on that. we're meeting this coming Friday. Via Zoom, I hope, because I'm going to be a long way away. um, the policy study groups, or anything to bring up there?
We have a meeting next week on Tuesday.
Okay. And the Parks Foundation representative, so you had a meeting yesterday, right?
Yes, I was at a family funeral, so
Oh.
Tim sat in for me.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. And was there anything that the board should know about the
CA.
foundation meeting?
I mean, all of it's important, but certainly I was able to report on the topics Roger asked me to cover.
Yeah.
I can't think of any, new information.
And lastly, the UPDEC Planning Study Group, and that's you've not met, have you?
Nope.
Okay. Alrighty.
Didn't they elect a new board? Or is that just the nominating committee for the foundation? Or maybe I'm a meeting behind.
You are correct, they did get new officers.
Yep.
But it was more of a successional approach, who's must leave, and then who's remaining that would be willing to serve. So Megan Pusey will be our new president.
Right. Ellen's vice
Ellen will be
president.
vice president, and Mary Ann Downey will be this secretary.
And Jim Conlon is staying on as
Still as
treasurer.
treasurer, correct. Thank you for that. It was done so low-key.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
It didn't seem to be a big,
And-
Yeah, no
action item.
campaigning.
Right,
Yeah.
It was
I'm
really
sorry,
done well in advance, so
Yes.
And
it
the-
was no surprise.
yeah, no surprise.
the vice president is?
Ellen
Ellen.
Kirchhoff,
Okay.
yes.
Gotcha. All right, ready to move on to old business, and an important action to approve the tax levy ordinance for 2021. I mean, the ordinance 2021-08. So,
I don't have much really to add, other than I kind of went through the basics of the levy last month, where I kind of detailed out all the different steps that we usually go through. And this is really just the legal document that has to get filed with the county at this point. So the board selected various options, we're presented with various options. You selected one. I took that information and put it into the black box so that we could have the public hearing and create the ordinance. So at this point, this information goes to the county clerk's office, and we basically don't hear anything else until the levy gets finalized in April at that point, other than that they write to confirm that they received our numbers. So unless you have specific questions, you know, I think everything has gone smoothly in the normal annual process so far.
Okay, so if I move to approve ordinance 2021-08, we're ready for that?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
an ordinance providing for the levying, assessment, and collection of taxes for the fiscal year. How about the fiscal year 2022-2023 of the Urbana Park District?
Second.
that's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, we should take a roll call vote on this. We'll start with Roger.
Aye.
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 Okay, and we have passed our tax levy for the coming year, which is important in that we really got to do it, or else. So,
Yeah.
there was no old business removed from the consent agenda, so we are on to new business. First item, action to approve the 2022 capital improvement budget and revisions to the 2019A and 2021 capital improvement budgets.
Planning staff's ready to roll.
Yeah, I can start with the revisions, so I'll kind of walk through 2019A and then 21 first. So looking at 2019A capital budget, I think Katie and I adjusted every single line almost within this document. So starting with the revenue section, the bond revenue was revised to the actual, and then we had new revenues that are now identified for the health and wellness facility, and so that would be the donations from the foundation, the park grant, and then transfer from general fund. Then moving to expenditures, revised to the actual expense of cost of issue. which was quite a bit lower.
Ooh, yay, hooray.
Well, that's a little misleading
Oh,
because the
rats.
reason that the bond monies went down and the cost of issue went down was because when we received that bond money, the portion that was applicable to the repayment of the old bonds went into the bond fund instead. And so the cost of issuance wound up getting split between the bond fund and the capital improvements fund. So the new money came to capital improvements fund, and the cost of issuance for the new money, the allocation of that was this 89. The rest was related to paying off the remaining principal of the 2 old bonds that we refunded on, and that went through the bond fund. So there was some finagling around but it's all correct now. So we didn't actually pay less. We really did pay that 114,000. It's just some of it got paid from the bond fund instead.
Out of different pots.
Yes, and so that same amount of money actually, basically this amount that went down from 5,934,000 to 5,910,000, that's the same amount decrease because that also got moved over, if that makes sense. So it's just trying to get it all kind of what we thought was going to happen and then what really happened and kind of getting that all fleshed back out now that more things are certain.
So then what we started to do is really separate out known project costs based on, this budget's really split into Crystal Lake improvements or health and wellness initiatives. So in Crystal Lake improvements, we've separated by 2 primary project areas, one being the rehab project construction and the other one being the road resurfacing, which is then further separated into design work that we are under contract with currently, and the money that's now set aside within this specific budget for the construction for the mill and resurface of that road. And then in health and wellness, we had known costs that we have now identified from park application fee, the facility design contract, which is now executed, traffic study, archaeology, and then we have the offsetting expenses for those new revenue lines that I discussed just a minute ago.
Is that a sort of standard amount for archaeology? Or are you anticipating finding a mastodon or something?
So they completed that review and we got the all clear.
Okay. But is that?
They did
is
like
that
a ground penetrating radar and they had like, I can't remember how many holes they had to dig and then review the material that they dug from that. And then based on those findings, we're doing radar sensing technology on part of the project site, but we're fine.
But it's a customary amount. I mean, it's not a whole lot more than you expected.
No, I mean, I think it's pretty affordable, but
Oh, yeah, I
we
just
haven't
was
really had to, go
Odd
down that
number.
road that frequently,
Yeah.
but, we work with the university on that, and so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think we get some savings on that as well.
Good.
So I can go to 2021, starting in the revenue section that has tributes and donations adjusted, and also identified 2 donations received for the Ambuck Shade structures and the purchase of a sculpture. And then in the expenditure section, we had a revised lower cost of issue.
That really was lower. That one really was. So that was good.
And
Well,
then
I was glad for
our
that.
ADA line is now dedicated to 2 ongoing projects that was the original intent for the ADA for this year. One being the Blair Park Oslad improvements, and then the other being the transition plan ADA audit. And then in equipment, we've identified some known expenses for garbage truck, mower and a facility, Gator utility vehicle, and then an upcoming 3/4 ton bid that we'll have out in the next couple months. And then our contingency there at the bottom increased by the $200 that we had received as savings from the cost of issue.
Woohoo.
So then on the 2022 capital budget, I went through this line by line last month, so I won't go again because we presented tonight unchanged from that. But I will note that a lot of our funding from this capital year is being used to accumulate funds for the eventual replacement of Prairie Play. So we had $20,000 in 2021. We have, I think it's about $340,000 and then in this year, and then in next capital year, we'll have another approximately $300,000 that we'll use as part of the overall project for the replacement in 2023. And then just kind of one of the other big expenditure lines you'll see is the vehicles and equipment. And so that includes a half-ton truck, dump truck, brush chipper, a trailer, and another Gator utility vehicle. But like I said, I did go kind of reviewed it last month. We don't have any changes this month. We're all good with it still. But I'm happy to answer any questions or go into any detail that you would like me to.
Ready for a motion?
Well, the chair would certainly entertain such.
Ooh, how well will you entertain it? That's what I want to know. So I move that we approve the 2022 capital improvement budget and the revisions of the 2019A and the 2021 capital improvement budgets.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or any questions on the point? Hearing none, roll call vote, starting at the left with Cedric.
Aye.
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 And that carries unanimously with all 5 commissioners voting. That takes us to review the annual board actions calendar. And this is not
sorry.
something we necessarily need to
Yes.
take action on, but
It's for your information, but just as you know, we use this to sort of track our annual major activities, make sure we have a balanced calendar, we don't forget critical steps in our process. Certainly we can add or detract anything that the board would ask.
Yeah, I might just comment too, like, this is where Kelsey, this is the document that Kelsey actually uses to populate the upcoming actions for the president's report.
Yeah.
And so that's why it says like approved safety manual, just, we have it calendared as something that every December we make sure we've
Yeah.
reviewed if we need to, but it's all kind of like optional / in flux, just based on the needs. It's just kind of make sure that we don't ever drop anything critical.
but yeah, it's important that all the annual things that have to take place
Exactly.
are included
right.
right here.
Track it So
Yeah.
we don't find
And
ourselves
our-
in a surprise situation.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily have to be in these months or.
Right. If
or
we get
whatever.
off a little, it's
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
but it helps us balance the workload too. If things could
Right.
shift to a month that's less, then
Yeah.
we could certainly do that if, if it wasn't restricted by a schedule.
Right, and we haven't had a problem with the schedule as it's been. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think.
Right. The only thing we've had to jigger a little, and I don't know if we've fully accounted for it here, is when the new UPDAC members are actually appointed. That's on here as
Yeah,
in
I thought about
June.
that, yeah.
But I think it's good actually to at least aspirationally have that on here this early.
Yes, oh, yeah,
Because,
absolutely.
because I feel we always seems like we're playing catch up.
Yeah.
And having the reminder here, I think is a good thing.
Agreed.
So, any comments or questions on the annual actions? Seeing none, and we also had no new business removed from the consent agenda. We're on to comments from commissioners.
I know, it won't surprise anybody that I have a couple of comments. I won't be able to be at the meetings in Chicago.
Okay.
I like the idea of a joint meeting with the school board. I think it sounds like it's pretty imperative that we do that. And then I had a question about Matt Deering attending any of the legal symposium meetings. Does he do that? How does he?
I think he did.
I think he
yes.
did this
He did,
year.
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it was virtual, so we
Yeah.
weren't all together like we
Right.
usually are, but he
Yeah.
had us register him,
Yeah.
so.
Oh, good, that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, because I was thinking about Betsy going up there, and
Yep.
and I also felt that it was really important And he works for, not just us, he works for the Forest Preserve District too, so it's, I mean, it's
Correct.
kind of a double fit. Okay, good, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, he had us register him, but his firm was reimbursing us. He just worked with us to get registered and stuff, because we had an easy way to do it, so.
Good.
We're happy to facilitate that, because we learned so much
So
there,
much.
so.
It was
Yeah, it
great.
sounds
Glad
like
that
it.
he
Super great.
hears the same thing, and it helps facilitate conversation, so.
Yeah, we all really benefit from that. And there's any number of things we're ready to go back and start working on to get into shape. It's also nice to know if you're doing things right.
Sometimes we leave terrified,
Right.
and then other times, we're like, okay, we're good this
Right.
year.
I do, now that we're in that discussion, I just want to add one of the topics. I think the first discussion was on FOIA and Open Meetings Act. Super important. They always usually have a session of something because there's law and law cases.
Yeah,
But I
yep.
think, believe it or not, they kind of go through, this happened in a public setting, but one of the groups, I believe, the rule was in public comment, you couldn't say anything negative about that.
That was their rules.
And, I mean, so when you hear things like that, it kind of reinforces how far away many other groups are and what they're doing, or how bad, some of that is being handled. So, because you go, well, why are we having this topic again? Or I thought we knew all this.
Yeah, who was so silly as to think that
I
was
don't-
acceptable?
I probably wouldn't say the name.
No, but I'm just
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
the question is, who would?
Right, and you think, well, that doesn't make any sense, but people don't know, and so that training and that reminder, and that's why we do those things, and
So nothing that we have to be, no FOIA stuff that we need to worry about? It didn't look like it.
no, not anything, everything's kind of always mentally checking, are we good, yeah, we're good there, and, kind of go
I'm
through that.
curious if there was any discussion I mean, Urbana is meeting remotely for the city council. Did that yesterday, and our advice from Matt has been, well, it's no longer a declared emergency. You can't do that.
Right,
Was that reinforced in the legislative,
I don't
They
believe
talk
they
about
talked
remote
that, I
meetings.
I expected that too.
And illegal?
That is, etiquette as far as commissioners, whether they mute somebody or not mute.
Oh, yeah, we
Yeah.
did
They said
discuss
you-
that too.
Because
Yeah,
they were muting
right.
them after
Yeah.
their public comment, like,
Yeah,
right when their time was up, or I don't know, it was just kind of like,
Oh, jeez.
and I think what they're saying is, other than your minute rules, let people say what they're, and then I think there was some discussion of profanity or,
oh, yeah, that's right, it was
Oh,
a,
well,
saying
somebody was being
inappropriate
profane.
things, but, they were saying, kind of how I heard it is, yeah, unless they're really aggressive and abusive,
Yeah.
but toughen up, people say things and, I mean,
It's not anything a third grader wouldn't heard on the playground.
well,
am I-
Oh,
I'd
sure.
rather hear it than try to shut somebody down and read about it in the paper,
Yeah.
know.
Or be on the receiving end of
Right,
something even
right.
worse.
Well,
So-
and I think what we heard about remote meetings was Jason Anselman basically said that it's probably legally defensible to meet remotely, and many local governments are, according to the current like Illinois executive orders and all of that. But Matt is saying that the issue is it'd be difficult to justify when all of our programming has
Right.
returned to in person.
Right.
So it's hard to say, well, but our board meetings can't because of the emergency, when we're clearly doing a lot of other in-person activities. So it's just a gray area that, I don't know, we just don't want to,
Right,
And the city council wouldn't be in that situation.
Right.
because
Correct.
They don't have any public programs. so.
right.
Right.
So I thought,
Well,
when we
the
thought
city,
about
the
that,
city certainly does.
Well, the city does,
I mean,
but the-
yeah,
So,
Not
they're
for
not necessarily
citizens.
gathering
but not in
people.
the, not in the
Right.
same way, and I think in fact they have still a lot of their employees working remotely, so.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah,
we're happy to explore remote
Yeah.
meetings further if you'd like us to.
well,
so.
and I
I
think
mean,
in
it's a
our-
little hard for the operations folks to be working remotely,
right,
but they are out of the building.
I think what we internally at staff level said, well, we still have winter to go. So if things change,
Okay.
we could certainly adjust ourselves depending on the actual situation. So we don't know that, but I've seen different models predicting at least 3 different approaches, but until it happens, so.
Has there been a determination on a holiday staff party?
I'm sure we'll do something. We had our staff retreat. It was modified, but we did have a gathering and a get-together. So there would likely be some sort of effort. Don't
Yeah,
know
I
the
haven't
details
gotten a
yet.
save the date from the
Right.
committee yet, but I know we normally would invite a
did-
commissioner
yes.
to come and help
Sure.
pass out gifts and so forth, so I haven't heard anything yet, but I'll be sure to, I think I know which staff member of my team's on the committee, so I'll follow up with them and make sure that they know that they need to like reach out and invite and make sure that either you, Michael, or Nancy, or whoever is available can come and, well, of course, you're all invited.
Yes.
But, we usually try to make sure that one of you can surely be there if you're able, so.
I think we'd like to, it's just, probably taking the pulse of the group and comfort level and see,
Well, yeah,
again, our
we're
staff retreat
still,
was
we're still
modified.
living in strange times.
Right.
There's no doubt of that. Any other commissioner comments? Seeing no indication of that, I believe we have exhausted our agenda, and I will declare us adjourned then.